an extra step in paperwork, just like you said, he would go right back to El Salvador, which is his home country, where he belongs. And President Bukele does not want to give him back to the United States, nor do we want him back.
Right, so that's it. Bukele doesn't want to give him back. You don't want to take him back. So there's no facilitation of anything. He stays in the country where he was born, and this is over, you think, but the media is not going to stop asking about it. And now senators from Maryland are going to fly down to El Salvador to try to meet this terrorist in prison?
Well, Donald Trump and his happy band of constitutional violators are yucking it up for the cameras and saying all sorts of lies about Armando Abrego Garcia outside the courtroom. And they're filing things inside the courtroom that show a complete defiance and lack of respect for the United States Supreme Court. So what are they going to do next? And it starts with they're trying to, on the fly, reinterpret and flip the script on what the Supreme Court actually ruled. They said, we read it as being only that we need to facilitate on the domestic side Mr. Abrego Garcia's return. So we'll send him, we'll let his plane in if it comes our way. If he does a prison break on his own, we'll let him in. That's our domestic facilitating, right, Judge? No, says the lawyers for Armando Abrego Garcia, who in a new filing just in advance of the hearing later today, tune back here on Legal AF, because I'm going to do a full update tonight about what transpired with Judge Xinis and the contempt hearing. This goes beyond Armando Abrego Garcia, whether he is or is not part of MS-13. This goes to the heart of our Constitution and our rule of law and the type of country we live in as we all wrap our flag around us. What does that flag say? What does it mean? That's what this is about. Now let's get down to the new filing, which is in response to some old filings by Donald Trump's team. We had a series of declarations, sworn statements under oath that have been filed. The most recent one late last night at 5 o'clock by Joe Mazzara, who says to the world that I am the acting general counsel for Homeland Security. Good for you, but you're not telling the truth, Mr. Mazzara, because you've reinterpreted, narrowly constrained, contorted out of all resemblance of anything in English, the language of the Supreme Court ruling. When you say, well, we understand we've got to facilitate, but we only have to facilitate within America. We only have to facilitate domestically. That's what that phrase means, I believe. And since I believe it, it must be true. We just don't see the same words on the same page as the judge. And we'll get away with it, won't we? Well, I don't think so. So in the filing from last night that I'm sure caught the attention of Abrego Garcia's lawyers, they said the following on paragraph 7 of his declaration. DHS, Department of Homeland Security, has established processes for taking steps to remove domestic obstacles. Now they've converted it into, we don't have to facilitate, we just have to remove domestic obstacles. That's not what the Supreme Court ruling says. That would otherwise prevent an alien from lawfully entering the United States. But we won't extract him from domestic custody of a foreign sovereign nation. You're not being asked to. You're being asked to facilitate his release from the El Salvadorian jail that you, the United States, put him in illegally under a contract with a payment of money to put him there. You're storing human beings in El Salvador, and nobody believes you didn't sign a storage contract and you didn't pay the monthly rent, okay? If you have a storage unit, you get a contract, you got to pay the monthly, or they put a padlock on it. We got storage wars. Now we're talking about human beings. And the Trump administration and Pam Bondi like to yuck it up on Fox News about a guy who's sitting there rotting in jail that he should not be in a country he should not be in, pursuant to an order, pursuant to a Supreme Court decision. Let me give you what the new filing is, and then we'll cut to Pam Bondi yucking it up on Fox News with Jesse Waters. Okay, here we go. This is a reply in support of a motion for contempt that was filed just today on Tuesday in advance of the hearing at 4 o'clock later this afternoon. Again, I'm going to report on that right back here on Legal AF. Here, it's short. Let me read it to you. The government contends that the term facilitate is limited to removing any domestic obstacles that would otherwise impede the alien's ability to return here. That's from the Mazzara declaration I just read you. Not so. The Supreme Court ordered the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. It's not about what you're doing over here in a masturbatory way in order to make yourself feel better about domestic obstacles. It's about making the phone call. It's about making the inquiry. It's about while Donald Trump was with Bukele, the madman dictator of El Salvador, leaning over instead of being, having 30 pounds of potatoes stuffed into a 10-pound sack in the Oval Office and just saying, hey, we need the guy back. Remember that guy, the contract of the $6 million? I need the guy back. That's what you need to do. That facilitates the release from custody. The focus is release from custody, not on removing domestic obstacles. That phrase was never used at the Supreme Court. And they continue, and to ensure that this case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. Remember, 13 different judges. Judge Xinis, all 3 judges at the Fourth Circuit, and 9 judges at the United States Supreme Court all ruled that Abrego Garcia was in the country and could not be removed to El Salvador under a legitimate, unappealed by the Trump administration order of, or any administration, order of removal. Remember, 2019, Trump was still president. So his administration did not appeal that order stopping the removal of Abrego Garcia to El Salvador. You want to remove him somewhere else? That's fine. Bring him back. Give him due process, and then you can figure out where to put him as long as it's in America. Get it? And not El Salvador. They continue. That order, the one of the Supreme Court, is rendered null if construed solely to require removing domestic obstacles. To give any meaning to the Supreme Court's order, the government should at least be required to request the release of Abrego Garcia. To date, the government has not done so. We know that from the video clip of Bukele saying, I wouldn't release him. Why would I release him? Contrary to the government's assertion that it lacks authority to take any such actions, its own Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE policy directive, requires supervisors at the Department of Homeland Security, and I assume that includes Mr. Mazzara, to, quote, fully coordinate at the international level to facilitate the return of removed individuals. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, announced that the government delivered an additional 10 detainees to El Salvador just this Saturday. So now they continue. That involved all 3 of the actions the government contends the courts cannot order. 1, making demands on the El Salvadoran government, dispatching personnel onto the soil of an independent sovereign nation, and sending an aircraft into the airspace of a sovereign foreign nation. The government holds contractual rights to send prisoners to its contract facility. That's all it is. It's a storage unit for human beings. It's pretty inhumane, but that's what it is. Where the United States has outsourced part of its prison system, and it holds the power to secure and transport its detainees, Abrego Garcia included. That's from filings by the Department of Justice. It can exercise these same contractual rights to request their release. Got a contract? Point to a term in it, stop paying, get them back. As the detainees are being held pending the United States' decision on their long-term disposition. That's from Bukele, the president of El Salvador. We're going to keep them pending what the U.S. tells us to do. All right, that's the facilitating part. Since this court's April 10 order on remand, clarifying that the government is required to take all available steps to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia, and this court's April 11th order requiring daily updates, the government's updates do not indicate that any steps have been taken to comply with the court's and the Supreme Court's orders. There's no evidence that anyone has requested the release of Abrego Garcia. That's it. Signed, Quinn Emanuel out of Washington, and a whole bunch of other lawyers. By the way, side note on Quinn Emanuel, I did a whole hot take on this. They actually represent the Trump organization and were brought in there at the top of the administration in April to serve as its ethics counsel. They're serving as the ethics counsel for the Trump organization to make sure it abides by whatever law daddy says, to make it ethical for them to do business in and around the Trump administration. And that is the head, the managing director or managing partner of that firm is serving in that role. While at the same time, Quinn Emanuel is off suing suing on behalf of representing Armando Abrego Garcia and representing Harvard University in their new challenge to the Trump administration, likely to be a lawsuit. The only thing I can figure out, because I know Quinn Emanuel pretty well, is that they would not have agreed. They must have it in their engagement letter that they will not be penalized, and they will not agree to be the ethics counsel for Donald Trump, which apparently was his choice, this guy, Bill Burke, unless they were given the right, as all lawyers should be given, to pick their own clients and take on their own cases, even if it means being adverse to the Trump administration. That's the only thing I can think of, because as of right now, Donald Trump has shown that he's got a taste for going after law firms. He's going after more than a dozen. He's collected more than $1 billion worth of tribute and ransom for them in free legal services, but he hasn't put Quinn Emanuel on the blacklist like he has, 6 or 7 other firms. Why not? They've had to have a deal in the background. I'll continue to report on the Quinn Emanuel involvement. I love the work they're doing for Abrego Garcia, and I love the work they're doing for Harvard, but something's up. And I want to continue to drill down on it. Tune back in here later tonight. I'll give you the update about what happened at the hearing of Armando Abrego Garcia's motion for contempt in front of Judge Xinis based on this new filing. Until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.